Hi, Rich from Dyno. Kind of a sad day for me, but I'm going to turn it into a positive. I decided about a month ago not to expose Dynotech with what I've run into over the years there. Jim and I were very good friends. What's happened now, he's refused to admit he's off on his 850 testing. Just to give you guys, so I'm going to turn this into a positive thing. Most of you guys have seen my videos on education. And just for a little chuckle, here's a single ring, my Summit, which I bought. It had a turbo on it. It had been run hard out west. Pistons look like brand new. The single ring looks like brand new. When I did that video exposing the guys with the Chinese pistons, several people got mad at me. Big John quit buying my pipes over it, So guys, my intent is to help the consumer. My intent today is to educate you on dynoing, internals, etc. So I'm going to go over the 850 fiasco. We spent a year and a half. I borrowed Vince D'Arrigo's sled, probably 500 dyno runs. I bought my own sled. We actually field tested. We knew that what the other people made, SLP had a nice pipe at 4.5, Blankman at 5.5, but with the internal it would detonate. And then we field tested. Depending on the air temperature, we had 2 to 3 miles per hour in 1,000 feet. The pipe we field tested and the Y pipe went to Dynotech. They had both been dynoed, they had both been field tested. The Y made 3. By the way, it loses 2.5 on the stock pipe. It makes 3 on our big straighter pipe. Jim claimed that we made 2 horsepower at 8,200. Our pipe makes, and Y makes 8 at 8,000. The reason Goofy Jim got 8,200 was the timing got pulled back. So when you have less timing, you rev more. When the Y pipe came back from Jim's, it was pure black. So Jim can rant and rave about all his fancy gauges and air fuel. It's all BS, guys. When I was a rich man, I spent $6,000 on Porsche detonation gauges right from Germany, right from the Porsche racing department. They worked great. My 1000 triple at 13% detonation was max power. But you know what, guys? My dyno told me that. My 8 mile an hour slip told me that at the track. I didn't need those gauges. I put new pistons in the engine. Jetted up one to be safe. Locked all 3 cylinders up at 13% detonation. With new pistons, it was a whole different animal. It now needed less detonation. When I was racing out in Brainerd, Minnesota, I asked the Southern boys there, the Johnsons with the Mopar. I got off my sled. I said, I'm never going to race a pro stock. You guys use all those gauges, air, fuel, and exhaust temp. The guy looked at me and grinned. He goes, sir, we look at them, but we go off our spark plugs and our miles per hour. That is our horsepower. So guys, that's your bottom line. I've got DPAC instrumentation. I've got a beautiful air horn, much better than what Jim has at his Superflow, but that's not the point. I quit using it years ago. Here's why. It told me nothing. When your engine's in a perfect state of tune, your airflow is different. Sometimes an engine with a little less airflow on a 2-stroke might make power. It all comes down to running your dyno exactly like you ride your sled. So, I'm going to give you a few pipe basics. I have the NHRA national record at 160.5 miles per hour. I use modified crankshaft pipes. I lengthen the center, shorten the header. I use crankshaft cylinders that I ported. A lot of dyno development. I go to Dynotech. My engine makes 275 horse. The dyno is jumping all over the place. Jim says, let's jet down to. I said, Jim, you've never been sideways at 150. I'm spot on. He convinced me to jet down to. By the way, here's a Dynotech. It doesn't have flywheels. It's computer controlled. So what the engine is doing is surging. He jetted me down to. We blew the spark plugs out of the engine. Cracked all the porcelain. Luckily didn't ruin it. So once again, Jim doesn't race these. He has no idea what it takes to run 160 miles an hour and be, nobody's close to me. I'm still 2 or 3 miles an hour ahead of the field. This was 9 years ago. The proper way to dyno, and this is how we dyno, this is how factory engineers, you instantly get up near your peak within 100, you hold it, and it stabilizes. So here's a dyno tech with a completely false reading. It tells you nothing about your pipe diameter, nothing about your ignition timing. Guys, it's nuts. You could have a Prius, and it would still probably surge. So, I'm going to show you pipe design. For you guys that still don't get it. I started SHCRA because I was fed up with ISR and all their baloney. So I've got a few haters out there. We've got the biggest circuit in the country. I have the good old boys, the trail boys, that come to my race, and the pros. That's why we're big. And if you've ever seen my pipe, my rules don't care where it points. Fuel cars point up in the air with the other guy. So my pipe points up, out, and it's as straight as it can be. Guess what, guys? 3 horse better than it's fitted. 3 horses giant. By the way, our rules allow Y pipe and reeds in the stock class for the cats because they're down compared to the Skidoo. And I can tell you now that I race the stock class, 5 horsepower is 1 sled length from 500 feet. Guys, that's giant. So let's go back to Goofy Jim, and you draw your own conclusion. He takes the Jaws pipe, runs it 55 seconds wide open. On a state-of-the-art $14,000 850 Skidoo developed by Rotax engineers. He makes 15 horsepower on the stock fuel map. 55 seconds. Now, let me give you some facts. Goofy Jim also was telling everybody to put 2 degrees of timing in. So Vince comes out from Bivens and wants to see what's going on with his fudge. I was busy, I argued with him, but we hooked up to our dyno. Here's what goes on, guys. With 1 degree of timing, and I forget the exact seconds, you can run your Skidoo wide open for 20, maybe 30 seconds. And then, due to the timing on the stock fuel map, you would start getting slight pre-ignition, detonation. It will slowly close the exhaust valve and slowly take a little time away, and your power will drop 1 or 2 horse. You Canadian guys going wide open across the lake probably won't know it. Very smart from the engineering. Now, if you do 2 degrees, within 15 seconds, you're going to start nosing over. If you do 3, like a drag race setup, within 7 or 8 seconds, you'll be at the peak and nose over. So you guys, you draw your own conclusion. How did Dynotech run 55 seconds, wide open, and not drop any power on the stock fuel map? You draw the conclusion, you're the jury. So, back to pipe design. The reason we knew we had the most power, here's your stock pipe. Curled. We spent half a year or more. Good dimensions. Dimensions are our Polaris pipe, which is the highest horsepower, our Arctic Cat 800, which is the highest horsepower. And my key guy fitting said, Rich, it's a much tighter bend on the Skidoo. So I came up with straightening the pipe out like an 800 E-Tech. First pull on the dyno, the same curl dimensions, was 2 horse better, guys. We went on there and fine-tuned it. So this pipe makes 5 horse. Our big Y makes 3. We have an honest 8. That's how I built my business for 40 years. Honest horsepower. If you notice, I'm not advertising 10, 15, 20 like Bikeman or RK Tech with their drop-in kit or a pipe. I'm advertising what it makes on a good dyno run. The interesting thing, when we were doing the dyno, we had a slight spike. And it was just at 100 RPMs, it showed us making 8.3 horse. I said to Vince, we're not going to print that because that spike is inaccurate. Once in a while on the hydraulic, I'll get a very, very slight spike. These guys with their super flows without flywheels and the computer controlling the water, they're getting surging, they're getting spiking. The other reason factory engineers and myself bring it up to your max RPMs within 100 and hold it, you now have no inertia. Your engine's not accelerating, your dyno's not surging, everything's stable. that also means your ECM has time to think. As smart as the ECM is, it's controlled to watch what happens on your pipe outlet. So as everything gets up to temperature, everything's stabilized. That's how your sleds are designed. That's why all you clowns that want to richen up your mid-range, you're going to lose gas mileage, you're going to lose performance. Your sled will run leaner in the mid-range. So, enough on pipes. Let's get into the difference between Jim Zacala, my ex-pal, who sits behind a computer, is one of these very intelligent people, but in my book, and these are all my opinions, guys, you form your own, he's like a magazine editor. They're not going to get on my 160-mile-an-hour sled and have that thing get sideways on them. They're not going to be a hill climb champ like I am and go up a hill where you're hanging on and your bars are bending sometimes when you hit a moment. They're not racers. They do not understand what actually goes on. Jim has no idea about clutching. I can tell you guys, if your Jaws pipe made 15 horse, you'd be winning the improved class. You'd be adding 10 grams of weight to your clutch. Guys, your clutch is a dyno. So 5 horse is a great gain on any 850 pipe. The only reason we've got it is our design. So let's go back to old Jim Zacala back in the days. And this is how these smart people think. He kind of reminds me of the CNN reporters. He's stubborn. You cannot tell him anything. He sits in his dyno room if you've ever been there. He never comments before a run like I do. And a lot of times I'm wrong. I'll make a comment before we actually pull the run. The dyno, when done accurately, tells you the truth. So I go there with my Ultra back in whatever age the Ultras were made, making great power, right in there with PSI and Decker. And suddenly, we eat 2 pistons. It was my buddy Art Trombley's Ultra. I drive back home, hour-and-a-half drive, put new piston in, go out in the hayfield next to the shop and eat 3 more pistons. I go in and I cut the internals out of the pipes. Put 3 more pistons in, the sled runs fine. I call Jim back. Jim argues with me, and he told me in the dyno room that the design of the head, water flow from Polaris was bad. That you needed the epoxy and do all this baloney. Jim never believed me on the internals. I sold hundreds of Ultra pipes with stock heads, stock water flows. Polaris engineers are not the village idiots, guys. Jim had seen years before where Tim Bender, one of the sharpest guys I know, had epoxied something on an exciter head or some head when he was racing to help something. So Jim, again, in my book, clueless. Then I drive with a Fusion 600 to Dynotech. We had made a solid 8 horse in our dyno room on a heat-soaked long run. At Jim's, the SLP pipe is beating us by 2 or 3. Jim has me take his Harbor Freight tools, cut my pipe apart, stick an internal in it, and voila, we make 12 horse. Back then in 06, I wasn't as sharp as I am now. I hadn't had as much experience, hadn't raced the sleds as much. So I drove home thinking I was the king of Fusion pipes. Sold a pipe to a Polish kid out of Buffalo. Kid calls back, Rich, the pipe doesn't work. So, like a fool, I sent him another pipe. By the way, guys, a pipe's a piece of metal. When we build them, we're within a 16th to an 1/8 of an inch. So the new pipe wasn't going to help this kid. Now the kid calls me back. So now I've got my excuse. He's got a ported cylinder. That's your problem. But I'm listening to this kid. He's a young kid. He's got an issue. I said, could you drive down here? He drives from Buffalo, New York to Union Springs, New York. We go out in the cornfield. I knew the kid was right, but I didn't know why. We went across the cornfield. I took the sled personally, went down to the woods, 500 feet, turned around, come back, and the thing nosed over. Went in the shop, cut the internal out, put it back together like we had it. The thing ran great with the kid's porting. So now I'm a smarter guy, right? Yeah. Smart people think they're smart. So, in 09, and I have a lot of Canadian customers, they're yahoos, you know, wide open across the lake, 7 miles, 5 miles. So, 40 seconds wide open on my dragon pipe in the dyno room. The pipe rose from 8,200 to 8,400. It was so hot. I'm real happy. I saw one to Dale from Dalton, the clutch guy, one of the best clutch guys in the world. He calls back, Rich, your pipe does not work. I go, what, you freaking Canadians? I held it 40 seconds. He goes, well, it's below zero up here in your language. I go, you know what, Dale? When I dynoed, it was 35 degrees. Guys, the dynamics, the violence of the engine, the airflow, at 35 degrees, we had way less observed horsepower. So I said, Dale, could you cut the internal out and weld it up, please? He calls back, he goes, your pipe runs great. I called Jim on all this stuff. Jim doesn't want to hear it. He's got his little magazine, he sits at his stool, and he's happy. And you guys are paying him for subscriptions. I'll go to my XP nitrous. Somebody talked me into buying nitrous bottles for my XP. So I go to Jim's in the middle of the summer. Everything's going good. He's calling Texas, how much fuel, how big it jets. And then Jim, with his goofy lugging, trying to control it, eats my pistons. Guys, they're expensive. So then my buddy Mike Kirshner, he's a truck driver, he clued me into a boondocker when they come out. He comes in, Rich, look at this. It's easier than jetting. I go, what do you mean, Mike? And he shows me, he's hitting the buttons. Mike goes up to Jim with his Mach Z twin crankshaft pipes. Jim seizes it up. I don't know how, because of the detonation sensor. Unhooks it from the dyno and sends Mike over to his buddy Jimmy Cooper's skidoo shop to get everything warranted. Mike comes here, we poured it, we put on the crankshaft twins, great twin pipes. We make 218 horse, we dyno for 2 days, no seizures, no baloney. Then Kelly Odell goes up there with his, I believe it was a triple. Jim tunes it up, Kelly goes out in the field, locks it up tight. His buddy Mark Fisher, comes down here. I said, Mark, you've been to Dyno Tech, you're going to be too lean. I'm going to richen up a little, we're going to pull a quick pull. We pulled a very quick pull. We locked the engine up. Guys, I pride myself. In 18,000 dyno runs in the early days, I used to lock a few up. I don't lock them up now. You lock an engine up dyno, you shouldn't. So, felt bad, got his cylinders redone, got him richened up. Then Casey Malkins, very sharp tuner. Goes to Jim's with, I forget, a Pro R, I believe it was. It's in the Dyno Tech. It's the greatest thing, you know. It's got timing, he's got porting, he's got compression. Kelly's calling me. He goes, Rich, the thing it just won't go out in the field, 300-400 feet. I said, Kelly, richen it up. He goes, Rich, we've tried everything. We've richened it up. He goes, can you fix it for me? So we redid it. Less timing, less compression. Poured on a new set of jugs. So guys, I want to turn this into a positive because there's so many guys in this industry. I'm going to give Jim the nickname the Illusionist. So when you read his magazine, when a guy like me reads it, I see zero truth. Then he claims to be the unbiased. Well, years ago, when bikemen used to drive in Wisconsin and spend a ton of money, Jim showed an Arctic Cat making 240 when it made like 210. People called him out, social media, and then he said that he had a computer that overheated, so the figures were bad. Jim Zacala personally told me, Rich Daly, a year or two ago when I was up there, that he never should have stuck up for bikemen when a customer called him out for having a dishonest, false correction factor. Bikeman had changed the correction factor. Somebody had caught it on the sheet, which gives you a much higher horsepower. I'm going to tell you one other story that in my book, and again, these are all my opinions backed by facts. Wade West, a friend of mine, used to be Ames Snow editor, was head of public relations for Yamaha. I said to him, Wade, what's the deal on that Apex being a higher horsepower than it was? In every Yamaha showroom, Yamaha printed an Apex with a much higher horsepower than it actually made. Yamaha knew it, the Japs knew it. Jim Zacala, and Dan from D&D told me this, had dynoed it. Dan thinks Jim had added fuel because he called Dan when another Apex came in looking for a PC5. So this is stuff I've heard. I wasn't there. I don't know what went on. But I would be led to believe that the Apex did not make the horsepower that Dynotech said it did. Now, you're going to ask me, well, Rich, all these famous racers, Glenn Hall, all these sharp guys, go to Dynotech. Yes, they're very sharp guys. They know the horsepower reading is usually higher than it actually is. So guys, with this modern technology, an 850 with a smart ECM, you can't lug it at the dyno. Any of you guys that doubt me, I've got a 19 Renegade that I went out and bought. It's in break-in mode. It's got my pipe and Y. It's making 4 or 5 until it gets broken in. You're welcome to ride it. People are going to race it. You can see for yourself. Draw your own conclusion. But if I was a Dynotech subscriber, and this is my view, I would want my money back. Thank you.